Hello people of the internet, this is a Geek Gaming Culture channel, and by now I'm probably think you aware that a voice actor that was going to be in Bayonetta 3 had spoken out about the pay that she was going to get and why she stepped away from the role. Hellena Taylor, who was the English voice actor for Bayonetta and for the entire franchise, had spoken out in a lengthy Twitter video rant, and we have the transcript via Niche Gamer. We're gonna go through it because I've been noticing that a lot of people on Twitter are taking her side, and to a certain extent I kind of am as well. I know there are a few YouTube video creators that have taken her side, especially Rich of ViewTech USA, but I'm taking his words with a grain of salt because he has been accused of white knighting from Microsoft before, and I have noticed that he does favor Microsoft a whole lot more than he does with Sony and Nintendo. He's taken a lot of pot shots at him, and I'm not saying that it's deserved or not deserved, but I'm just saying that I'm not quite sure if I should take his opinions with a grain of salt or not. The other reason why I say that is because looking through this, and if you take a step back and really look at what she's saying, I feel as though there are a few problem areas, including some major red flags that come out, that stick out at both me and other people the more they kind of look at it and really dissect what she's saying. And even though she might have some truth to her statements, and even though this doesn't resolve the behavior of some people on Platinum Games side, including the CEO, we'll get to that, it seems as though Hellena Taylor's words might be raising some ire of some people. We'll go through the transcript, and I will link to you in the comments down below the full transcript and the initial Twitter video that started this discussion. And before I do that, I want to make people aware that by me saying there might be some red flags, this is not me saying that Platinum Games is not at fault at all. Far from it. There are no real winners in this scenario, but we'll get to that because, again, there are some things I want to say about that. But let's get to her statement, and I will read to you the transcript because I want to interject when I feel as though I need to, because I feel as though this is going to upset a lot of people with me saying, hey, I'm not completely taking her side on this, and I'm not exactly going to completely believe her because I want to look at things through a more critical and more objective lens here. And I feel as though you guys deserve someone who is actually going to look at this and really look at things objectively instead of doing the knee-jerk reactions when you first hear this. Because yes, there is a problem with voice actors not getting compensated for their work as much as they should be. That is a widespread issue. It does not have any isolation to this incident, but I want to make things crystal clear that that is a problem that needs to be addressed. But we'll go through her story here and we'll discuss as we go along. Hello, my name is Hellena Taylor. I am the voice of Bayonetta, and I would like to explain to you why I did not voice Bayonetta 3. Bayonetta franchise made approximately $450 million, that's not including merchandise. As an actor, I trained for a total of 7.5 years. 3 years at the London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art with voice coach Barbara Berkeley, and 4.5 years with the legendary Larry Moss in Los Angeles. I don't have any problem with her mentioning the names, although none of the names stick out of me as somebody who's I'm familiar with. Although maybe people who are in that kind of field would know more than I do about those people, but I personally do not, but that has nothing suspicious about it. The thing that I'm looking at more is that she was the voice of Bayonetta, and that's going to come into play throughout this whole thing. That she has been the voice throughout the whole franchise from the looks of what I'm seeing here. But here comes the first red flag, and before anybody says things, we're going to look through it, and we're going to look at things objectively here, because this is what people were talking about, where they started saying, oh my lord, she's getting stifled. And what did they think this was worth? What did they offer to pay me? The final offer to do the whole thing as a buyout flat rate was $4,000 US. This is an insult to me. The amount of time that I took to work on my talent and everything I have given to this game and to the fans. Okay, so on the surface, $4,000 US is a drop in the bucket compared to how much they're making from this according to this statement. And yes, that is pretty low. However, there is a bit of a problem that I have with how she framed this, how she worded it. She said that she walked out on Bayonetta 3. She walked away from Bayonetta 3 on the notion that she was only paid this 4,000 US dollars, that she thought it was worth more than that she was worth more than this. The problem I have with this, and I think a couple people who I've seen and talked to have had a problem with, is that they don't know how much she was paid for the first two games. There's a reason why this is the case, is because Bayonetta 3 has a bit of a different story to it, where there might be more than one version, one more Bayonettas, like there might be 3 or 4 more of a different alternative reality. That is important because this might mean that she might have had a reduced role, that her Bayonetta, the one that we had known throughout the first two games, would have a reduced role in comparison to the one that would have the most focus. And that's something that's pretty important too, but we'll get to that later. If she had said that this was a pattern, that she was getting this much money throughout the majority of the games, and maybe she could have said that she understood it at that point, but now that her status in this game is a lot more established, that she's worth more, that now she's asking for more because she has done this for a while and they still refuse to give that to her, then she could have really pinned Platinum Games to the wall here and said this is a pattern which they don't compensate their voice actors to the amount that they deserve. But she's not telling us how much she made throughout the first two games. And this kind of adds some context. It would add some context to this. That's context that is missing out of this. And that raises a little bit of a red flag. Not too much, because still $4,000 is not really that much compared to what you would see a bigger name make, I would assume, and compared to how much $450 million would be for a person to make from a game, for the company to be making. But that missing context would explain a whole lot as to whether or not this was a pattern or not. And if she got more money on those two games and then she got a reduced role in this game, which she doesn't say if she did or not, and then because of that they gave her much less money, maybe to the effect they thought $4,000 was all she was entitled to get, maybe that's a thing that we should know about. Maybe that's something that we should be told about. Now she goes on, I am asking the fans to boycott this game and instead spend the money you could have spent on this game by donating it to charity. I didn't want the world. I didn't ask for too much. I was just asking for a decent, dignified living wage. What they did was legal, but it was immoral. Again, what was she asking for? I think that might have been a bit of a important piece of context that we could have had. How much was she asking for? If she would have said, hey, maybe I wanted maybe $10,000 or maybe a little bit more, just a little bit more to where my work was compensated. Yes, $4,000 is a drop in the bucket, but a drop in the bucket compared to what you were asking for. What if what we were asking for was $100,000 or $400,000? There's a bit of a difference between maybe $5,000 and $100,000. She doesn't specify. And before someone says, oh, well, she shouldn't have to say all that, she does kind of bring this up. But I should read the next couple of paragraphs, so this goes with this last one. Now, those of you who follow me on Twitter know that I am more of a lover than a fighter. I sometimes think I'm very much not like Bayonetta at all, but I guess I am a little bit more like Bayonetta than I thought. I don't know what that means. I understand that boycotting this game is a personal choice and there are those that won't, and that's fine. But if you're someone who cares about people, who cares about the world around you, who cares about who gets hurt with these financial decisions, then I urge you to boycott this game. Okay, so that paragraph there strikes me as odd and strikes me as contradictory. She's saying if it is within your decision to not boycott this game, then it's fine, but you're gonna be labeled as a horrible person. That to me sounds like she wants people to boycott the game and she's not okay with people not boycotting the game. Now, there's a few issues with the boycott itself, is that this is a financial squabble from what we are seeing. This could be done behind closed doors. This could be done where people on both parties, on both sides, can hammer out what is going on. She should have brought this up, first of all, in private, and maybe she did, and we'll talk about that in a moment, and maybe she thought this was the only way in order to get somebody to pay attention to what was going on. However, keep this in mind that the majority of the game is not just her. There are developers, there are other voice actors, there are publishers. Nintendo had nothing to do with this decision. That's why I'm not quite sure why Rich, if review tech to boycott Nintendo. They had absolutely nothing to do with this. This was all on Platinum Games. Nintendo was just the publisher. The only role they have is to say, give us the game, we will publish it and put it out the stores. That's the only role they have here. So those people who are trying to blame Nintendo, do not blame Nintendo for this. Until someone comes out and says Nintendo had everything to do with it and it was their decision too, they had nothing to do with this. Okay, but what do you think those people, the developers, the artists, the coders, everybody who is responsible for a game like this, for something that Nintendo had to come in and help with the publishing process because they couldn't get a publisher for B2? What would happen if boycott were to go through and was successful, which it might not be? They would get just as screwed. And she's talking about compensation. What kind of compensation would they have? What kind of compensation should they get? How much are they getting paid? Are they getting paid more, less, equal? This is something that I don't think she's thinking about when she says something like this, and what other people are thinking when they are saying they're going to boycott the game. And I said this about somebody who is much more egregious than I feel as though I am boycotting them, which is Activision Blizzard, because of what's going on with those. And a lot of gamers have said they're exiting stage left, and rightfully so. I hate that there are people who are good-natured people at those companies who just want to make good games and are getting brunt of the punishment because Bobby Kotick has to be an idiot. Like those people with Blizzard had to be idiots and double, triple, quadruple down. And there were people in the mainstream gaming media that decided it was within their mindsets to not say anything until it was convenient for them. And they don't deserve that. The people who are just like on the lower tier, they don't deserve that. They don't deserve to be included in any of that. What did they do? What did they have to do with anything that the higher ups were doing? That's one of the main problems. Is blessing and a curse. It's a double-edged sword. Yes, you send a message to the higher ups, but you punish the lower people as well. They didn't have anything to do with it, and they're just as much involved in this process. And again, this is something we go back and look at it. If you step back for a second and take a deep breath and just look at this for a moment, you might see, why is she treating a financial squabble as if it was something equal to one of the crimes that Activision Blizzard was accused of doing, and that was more or less proven to have done. And plus, I don't like how she worded that whole thing with, if you don't want to boycott, that's fine, but if you want to be considered a decent human being, then you'll boycott. You can't have it both ways there, Hellena. It's either boycott and you're fine with it, or they don't, and you think of them as despicable human beings. You can't have it both ways. There's no way you can do it. But we'll continue. I decided to do it to stand up in solidarity with people all over the world who do not get paid properly for their talents. Fat cats cream off the top and leave us the rotten crumbs. You know, in England right now, there are nurses going to food banks to feed their children. This is not right. This is not acceptable. It impacts mental health. Because of it, I suffer from depression and anxiety. I worried that I was going to be on the streets. Terrified me so much that once I was suicidal. Okay, I feel sympathetic of her situation, or at least the situation that she's describing here. However, was it directly caused by this particular situation that she's going through? Was that directly causes, or is she describing something that happened earlier on in her life? She doesn't really give the time frame for it. No, I don't think that's acceptable. No, she shouldn't have to go through that. No, there is nothing in my body that would tell me that she deserves anything like that. But at the same time, what's the timetable of that? When did she experience that? Is this situation what has caused her to go through some depression, anxiety? Is this life or death for her? What is going on here? Something in this, something how she's framing this doesn't sound right. And it makes some people feel uneasy to question because of how she frames it and what she's describing and how she's describing it put her. Now, this next part is catching some people off guard and saying there might be a red flag in this one. I am not afraid of a non-disclosure agreement. I can't even afford to run a car. What are they going to do? Take my clothes? Good luck to them. First things first, she said she was the Bayonetta voice actress for the first two games. The reason why this counts as a red flag is because earlier on, what she said about Bayonetta 3. Did she not get paid for the first 2 games? If not, then she needs to say that. The reason why is because if she don't get paid at all for the first 2 games and then she thought she deserved something from those 2 games and that it's only this particular game that she felt she was stifled, then she could put those people through the brick wall she put people on. Do you see where we're going with this? She only mentioned that she got stifled for Bayonetta 3. She never said anything about the first 2 games, so how much was she getting paid for those first 2 games? Because from what we see with that and what we're seeing here, she couldn't even afford to run a car. So she didn't get any money from those first 2 games? And if so, was it more or less than what she was getting paid for this game? Because I could be mistaken, but if you were not given any amount of money for the first game, then why didn't you say anything then? That could have been a serious crime, especially if you were employed and they're not paying you. You could sue them for a lot of money. And I would assume that's what you probably should do at that point. And I'm not saying it to be condescending or anything like that, but if this is happening to the point where you feel you're going to go broke as it is, and they're not doing anything to pay you for your compensation for your work when they are more or less a authorized employer and they should follow the laws there, then wouldn't that mean that you should go and take them to court for that? At least the US division? I'm not sure how you would do that in Japan or anything like that, but I assume Platinum Games has a US division at the very least. So if that's the case, why wouldn't you sue them? That would be a very serious situation. That would go above and beyond what normal issues like this have. This would not just be, oh, you got stifled of money you thought you were entitled to or more than what you got. This could be you were being basically a slave to them. You're not getting any money. You were working for them for free. Keep in mind, she's only talking about the 3rd game. Why she's not voicing Bayonetta 3. She doesn't say how much she gets paid or anything about the payments for the first 2 games. This is why this is weird. And plus, she's talking about she's not afraid of a non-disclosure agreement. That's the other red flag. Non-disclosure agreement of what? Of how much you're getting paid? Because if that's the case, if she's not afraid of a non-disclosure agreement, first of all, what could she reveal? What has she revealed? There have been a lot of rumors going around because she's making this statement of what she could have known, what was going on, and is there something else going on? Now, I'm not going to get too much into the rumors. There's a lot of them right now. I don't want to get into trouble saying that kind of stuff. However, if she's not afraid of a non-disclosure agreement, and I'm not going to get into anything else because she is getting accused by some people of revealing secrets about upcoming products, then why wouldn't she say anything about the first 2 games? You see how it starts to become a little bit uneasy? Why I'm holding my breath and holding my judgment on this right now? Yes, Platinum Games does have a lot to answer for. However, that does not mean that everybody who accuses them is completely correct in doing so. It does not mean that people who are accusing them are completely correct or are given free passes. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of problems I have with this, but there's more. Bayonetta always stands up for those with less power and stands up for what is right. In doing this, you stand with her, but stand up for the other people who are also working on the game. Remember, again, this is a financial squabble. This has nothing to do with stuff like what Activision Blizzard had to go through, like what Ubisoft went through. Unlike those things, this can be fixed. This is something that is a lot easier to fix than something like Activision Blizzard, but let's continue here. For those of you who are interested, I'd like to go to a little more detail about back and forth. The first thing is that I was required to audition again because sometimes voice changes with time. So I had to audition for the role and obviously pass with flying colors. She sounds a little bit full of herself there, a little bit egotistical. They then sent me an insulting offer. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to write to Hideki Kamiya. I'm going to write to him and ask him for what I'm worth. So I got a friend who has been in the business in Japan to write in Japanese to him. So a few things with this. First things first, what was this first offer? Because she then later on says that she wrote to him and then he gave her that $4,000 US. So one, what was she asking for? That might be important. What was she asking for? If she was asking for a humongous amount of money, then then there might be a little bit of a difference to when if she was only asking for a little bit more, not too much. She was saying, hey, I wasn't asking for way too much, but what was enough for her? Maybe a specific amount. Since she's not really worried about NDAs, she might be more than willing to divulge that. You see how this now seems as though it's kind of contradictory, where she's saying one thing and then turning around not telling us vital information we might need in order to say whether or not she's in the right here, and why it was so knee-jerk for people to automatically believe every single word she was saying here. I know he read it because I got a reply. I got a reply saying that he values greatly my contribution to the game and that fans really want me to voice it over, and the memory of first meeting me as Bayonetta is a memory I hold dear. So I thought, great, thank God. That's when they offered me for $1,000 US. You know, Platinum had the cheek to say I was busy, but they couldn't make it work with Miss Taylor's schedule. Well, I had nothing but time. Is that what they said, though? This is where we would love to hear from Platinum's side of the story. And sadly, some people on Twitter, though, want to hear the other side of this thing. But to be fair, that is because the CEO seems to be a little bit on the weird side, where he'll block anybody if you don't answer to him or reply to him in Japanese. And while some people might be able to understand what he's doing, where he's coming from, this is the worst possible time for him to continue to enforce those kinds of rules, because he has been saying that kind of stuff. And even Niche Gamer got blocked by him. So this is something that's not new to him, that he usually goes in this kind of behavior, but this is one of those times where you kind of have to relax those rules, because you need to answer for this. You need to give your side of the story. Maybe if Kamiya would have a PR firm or a PR person that could answer some of these questions, that could say something, could bring up some of these things and speak for him, say, hey, he says this or he says that, because he obviously can't, because he obviously doesn't have the capacity to. That he doesn't know how to do this sort of thing. Now, there's a lot of people that don't know how to PR really well, and that's why they hire people to do it for them, because if they do it themselves, it's going to cause problems for them, because they don't know what to say or how to frame things or how to phrase things. But hopefully we hear from the other side of this, because from what we gather so far, and from looking at it through a more calmer perspective of things and a little bit more critical mindset and a more critical thinking, it would seem as though we would need to hear from that other side before we take a side. However, this leads to this paragraph. Now, this is where she loses a lot of people, where she lost a lot of people, because of what this says and how she frames it and what she doesn't say. I'm going to read you the paragraph and then we'll discuss what this has. She then says, quote, they now have a new girl voicing her over, and I love actors and I wish her all the joy in the world. Wish her all the jobs, but she has no right to say she is the voice of Bayonetta. She has no right to sign merchandise as Bayonetta any more than I have the right to sign as Eva Green, even though I was her parrot on the video game The Golden Compass. That portrayal is hers and hers alone. They'll probably do a spin-off with Jam. Don't buy that either. Now, this is a paragraph that got a lot of people talking, with those people who were starting to kind of doubt if she was saying the entire truth here about what was going on. Because if it was any other person that was going to replace her as Bayonetta, then maybe she would have a complete point here and she would really have a lot of people on her side, more so than she probably already does. However, let's talk about the person who's replacing her. This is very important that we talk about who it is and why she didn't address this. The person that is reportedly replacing her is none other than Jennifer Hale. That Jennifer Hale, the one that is probably the most prolific female voice actor in history. She has name recognition. Her being at the top of the card would be like if Mike Tyson was at the top of a boxing card that has major draw value to your game. Sort of like what Troy Baker has with some of the things that he's in. He's a major draw. Not saying that they buy it for his voice or her voice alone, but that is a major factor. They are very sought after. And because of that, they have a lot of pull as to whether or not they get compensated to what they feel they are worth. They will pay top dollar for these people. Game developmental companies will pay for these big name actors, and they will go out of the way to make sure they get compensated to where they believe they are worth and maybe meet their demands. Now, seeing as how Jennifer Hale is probably one of the most prolific actors, one of the most prolific female actors in the industry, how much you want to bet that they're going to give her whatever she wants, whatever she asks for? And do you think she's going to settle for $4,000? I don't think so. I really don't think so. She's going to ask for a good bit more, and she would have the leverage to do that. And I'm not saying it because I believe she's greedy or anything like that. It's because that's a very sought after person. Her name alone will get a lot of people, a lot of eyeballs onto your product. I guarantee it will. So this begs the question, why didn't Hellena Taylor just say it was Jennifer Hale? That is a sought after name. People know who she is. Why did she not say her name? Maybe it's because if she would have done so, could have raised a huge red flag. If they were really going to try to stifle the voice of Bayonetta, then why would they hire Jennifer Hale? Why would they hire somebody who clearly have a bigger asking price than what they believed the previous person who voiced her would be worth? And I don't care what the excuse is. There is no excuse. There's not this, oh, well, she's a woman and whatever, because they did hire a woman. They end up hiring a woman. Obviously someone who might have the same viewpoints as Hellena Taylor might. And by the way, the rest of her story goes into quoting a biblical story about Lazarus, but she does address it to Kamiya, presidents of Nintendo, who had nothing to do with this kind of decision, and all other fat cats around the world. So there's that. That last paragraph where she goes into that story was getting a lot of people a little suspicious of the notion that she didn't even say anything about Jennifer Hale. She didn't even mention who was replacing her, and that's pretty important when you think about it, when you stop and think about this. And keep this in mind too, that not only was she not mentioning Jennifer Hale, but obviously she was talking about her. If I'm reading this correctly, she was also dunking on Jennifer Hale without actually mentioning her by name. So what do you make of that? She was more or less dunking on somebody who has 10 times the resume that Hellena does, because I don't see Hellena doing anything else other than Bayonetta. I haven't seen her doing anything else besides that, whereas Jennifer Hale has done a whole heck of a lot more. And if you're really wishing her well, why would you say stuff like that? Why does she feel like she's the only one that can actually voice Bayonetta the way that the fans would want her to sound like? Again, there's something that seems off about all this. And let's not even get into that they don't talk about how many hours they put into the game, how many lines they had, and that's pretty important too, because that might go into why she was only paid 4K, or why they only thought that 4K was sufficient. If she said, I put so many hours or so many lines, then that would really put Platinum Games into between a rock and a hard place. And again, you could say whatever you want about who replaced her, but I wouldn't buy it, because even if you were to say, oh, she didn't need that kind of money, she didn't need a lot of money, she's gonna be working a lot, and her name alone is going to draw people's attention. She's gonna want some better compensation than 4K. I could guarantee you she will. And that's not because she's greedy or anything like that. It's because she would deserve that. They would give it to her because they think she's worth that. And yes, Hellena Taylor could lose something, other gigs, because this is a squabble about financial disputes. If she's saying that she's not afraid to walk over NDAs, imagine how other companies are going to think about that, especially if they see that there are red flags in this story we're seeing. If you step back and think about it, I highly doubt people are going to want to hire her after this. It would be one thing if there was something really egregious, if she was breaking NDAs to talk about something like what Activision Blizzard went through, what Activision Blizzard was doing. This is not about that. This is about how much she thought she was worth, how much she thought she would want to get, and why she felt as though she was deserved that, and why she needed that money. I sympathize with what she said she went through. That has no bearing on whether or not I believe that there isn't or is some red flags here. Clearly there is. But that does not mean that Platinum Games is off the hook by any stretch of imagination, because the way they are handling this and the way that they are going about this is absolutely idiotic. Hideki needs to get PR firm now, because him doing this and acting childish selfish about everything, about his little rules that he does on Twitter all the time, is not helping. He may actually be 100% correct in what happened here. He may actually be completely correct in how he handled the situation on a personal level, but publicly he is a PR disaster waiting to happen. It probably already has. Regardless of if he's correct, the way that he's handling himself is not helping him. How does this help? How does him doing what he's doing on Twitter and blocking anybody outright like he's Steve Sheaves or something help him? Because you may not think that voice acting and talking is a whole lot of work. Keep in mind, you have to train your throat, you have to train your voice, you have to know how to change your voice in order to make sure that you are on it. You have to make sure your throat's not going to get shot in the middle of everything. You gotta make sure that you are able to talk for a long while. You probably know about the length of this video. I know full well how it's like. I don't know about the voice acting part, but I know how it feels to talk for a lot. And believe me, you may think, oh, I'm just rambling on, but you should see how I am after I record a video. How I am after I record something. It is not easy to keep it up. It is not easy work. I don't know how they keep doing it. They do a whole heck of a lot of work, and they do deserve compensation for that. I don't expect compensation. The only compensation I expect that people do treat me with respect and they do share, subscribe, and like the video. I don't expect anything else in return other than that, and that you guys are entertained and you guys have somebody to roast for a good 30 minutes or so. Because yeah, I have read some of those comments. For some of us, the entertainment and you guys being entertained and being informed is all we ask for, is that you get something out of it. And I hope you got something out of this, and I hope you're not that mad about what I have said. I hope that this gets resolved. I hope that both Hellena Taylor and Platinum Games get this straightened out, because here's the thing. I don't want to see this game get boycotted. I'm not going to boycott the game because there's way too many other people who are involved in the development in this game to punish them for some squabble like this. I do hope that Kamiya gets it together and hopefully realizes that this is not the way to handle things on Twitter. Twitter is a cesspool, and even though I might side with her at some points, there are a lot of problems that I have with Helena's statement. That does not mean she's completely incorrect or that Platinum Games is in the right in all of this, and that the people who are siding with one or the other are completely blamed for doing so. But I really wish that these knee-jerk reactions without looking at things through a critical lens would stop, because even in these squabbles, it becomes really hard to have a adult and worthwhile debate on these topics if people do that and are ready to ostracize people if they don't agree with them. Even something like this. This is something in which we can have a good compromise about, and this can be fixed. And maybe to fix them, we may need more details than what we're getting. This has been the Geek Gaming Culture channel, and that just happened.